Hi everyone, back here with Sean. We got an exciting announcement, a new store. We're going to be diving into some other things on how we get products into stores and some other stuff based on New York City. First things first, Sean, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Jason. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm fantastic. I know we've got some good news, so it should be a great day. But I
Yep,
mean, hey, let's hop into it. Do you want to kind of announce the first store you guys are talking about?
sure. So we put out a news release the other day that mentioned that we've now gotten commitments from three new retailers that have not yet been announced. But the other day on our investor call, we did announce and we put out a news release that the first of those three is Rouse's, which is an upscale chain down in and around New Orleans. They really have a big presence down in that Gulf region. They've got about 60, 65 really upscale stores. Most of them are either totally rebuilt or just brand new. It's a kind of a gourmet kind of a feel in there, and we're super excited. They're taking four flavors: cold brew decaf, after dinner mint chip, midnight chocolate, and cookies and dreams, which is our top seller. So we're really excited to be going in there. We think it's a great account. It's obviously an account that we've had our eye on for a long time, and we were able to get in there with the help of the brokers that we brought on a few months ago. And as I mentioned on the investor call, we certainly think we would have been in there sooner had it not been for the delays related to the virus. But things do seem to be returning back to normal in terms of the way the supermarkets are operating and reviewing and stuff, which is really great news for us. Here we are rolling in. We've known for several months that we were going in, but this is a very, very long process. I don't think most people understand the process of getting a new product from the time you first are speaking to the decision maker, the category manager, until you actually hit the shelf. I mean, it's several months to 8, 9, 10 months sometimes.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that in a second because I think people,
Yeah.
obviously they don't know. I've never launched a chocolate or an ice cream into a store. So let's touch on this kind of announcement, this store first.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about the size? I mean, obviously you say they're big. Do you have any numbers in terms of
Yeah, I
how many
think I
stores they
mentioned
have?
they've Yeah, I think I mentioned they've got about 60, 65 stores. I think we're going into 59 of them. I think they have 64 or something like that. I didn't ask the broker. I mean, typically you go into all the stores or you go into a subsection. I don't know why we wouldn't be going into 100%, but instead we'd be going into whatever it is, 90%, 93%. But a lot of times, even in certain other stores like Harris Teeter, which were in all of their stores, sometimes the freezers are just, the stores are laid out differently. Every supermarket has a different layout, and if they have a little bit less freezer space, for instance, in Harris Teeter, we're in all their stores, but we've got 7 flavors in most of their locations. But in some flavors, we have 5, and I think in other locations, we have 4 flavors. And that's just because of freezer space. So my guess is maybe a few of their older stores at Rouse's, they just don't have the space to take on an up and coming brand that they're just bringing in. And just like with everything else, hopefully, as we prove ourselves and prove our velocity, we'll be in all their stores.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, okay, cool. Well, hey, you were already touching on the process,
Oh,
but let's hop into it a little bit. So,
sure.
for people that aren't sure, what's the process of, getting a product into a retail store, right? What's kind of, is there a strategy involved? Talk me through. So you were saying you have to talk to decision makers. What's the first step, and walk me through to the point where, like you said, 4 to 10 months later, you're on the shelf.
Well, no, 4 to 10 months later, yeah, it can be longer than that. 4 to 10 months is like from the time you actually have a meeting,
Yeah.
and it's a long process, Jason. So, look, in some cases you're reaching out to the category manager. In other cases, I mean, uh, back in November, we got contacted by the category manager, the ice cream manager of one of the largest retailers in the country. We're not in there yet, but they had heard about Nightfood. They thought it was super interesting. We weren't planning to reach out to them yet because we didn't. We felt 2020, which is where we are now, would be too early to roll into this particular chain. So we hadn't reached out to them. They reached out to us. Hey, we want to make sure to meet with you guys in the summer when we're doing our review. We think what you have is super interesting. And so we've been in touch with them. So most of the time it's us reaching out to the buyer. In some cases, buyers have reached out to us, such as that case. When you get to another higher level, there's a little bit more awareness of the brand probably from the buyers than there was when we first started. Remember, I'm new to this as well, so I'm learning as we go. But yeah, I mean, you reach out either through the broker or in some cases, in some accounts, Jim and I have been handling these directly, where you reach out to the buyer and you say, hey, look, we know you're reviewing in a couple of months, or you're reviewing in November, or whatever it is. We'd like to come in and talk. Here's why Nightfood is something that's really, that we believe is really important in your freezers. And so when you ask about strategy, I mean, that's just tactics. I mean, you got to reach out, you got to make contact, whatever you're selling in any business. So that's tactical. But strategically, I think for us, one of the main things is that so many other products out there are me too products. So, there's the premium lines, Ben and Jerry's or Haagen-Dazs, and there's plenty of other premium ice creams out there. And then you've got, the better for you lines. So there's Halo Top and Enlightened and some of the others. And now you've got the keto out there. But it's very rare, I think, that somebody comes up with something that's truly uniquely different like we have. And that's made it easier. I mean, we haven't gotten yeses from everybody because a lot of these chains are looking for data. They don't want to be an early adopter and put in an unproven brand. But just the fact that they would even talk to us and meet with us and look at us, and you do look at, I mean, we did get into a bunch of really big chains on our first meeting in our first year. So I think that's a testament to our level of differentiation. Whereas if we were just another, hey, this ice cream is really delicious, everybody should try it, that's not really something that's going to turn on the buyer, because what does it add? What the buyer is looking at is, what does it add to their offering? Whether your ice cream is there or not, how much of a difference does that make to the consumer? Would the consumer miss it if it's not there? Does the consumer really need a fifth or sixth super delicious, high fat, full sugar ice cream to choose from? There's already Talenti, Haagen-Dazs, Ben and Jerry's, Jenny's. I mean, there's a whole bunch of these. They're great products, High Road. How are you going to be the 8th or 9th entry there on the shelf? And what does that add to the supermarket? I know the entrepreneur wants to get in, and they think there's demand, and they might be able to generate demand for the customer, but does the supermarket believe that there's an incremental value to having it in there? And I think for us, that's been what we focused on, because without that, the buyer has no motivation. The buyer doesn't really care if somebody, I don't think, buys a pint of Ben & Jerry's right now or a pint of Talenti, as long as the customer is buying ice cream out of that store. And so you want to add something incremental, and something that actually came up on our Telegram group, which I encourage everybody to join. And Jason, you can probably give or maybe we can put it on the screen, the link that everybody can go. Somebody asked about velocities required to maintain shelf presence. And I think, something that a lot of people don't know, I mean, non-dairy is booming. Everybody hears about it, all these ice creams, and we've got flavors in the works that have actually been developed that will, hopefully be rolling out when it's time, if the demand is still there, if the trend is still there. But what the supermarkets have told us, the buyers have told us, is that those SKUs, those products, right, those flavors of dairy-free ice cream don't sell as much. A good seller in the dairy-free section doesn't sell as much as an average or even below average seller in the regular ice cream section. But they need that in there because there's a subset of consumers that if those consumers go into the store and there's not a dairy-free option, those people will change the supermarket that they shop at. Okay, so they will go somewhere else. So it's kind of, the term is a loss leader. I don't know that, it's not that they're selling the units at a loss, it's that the space is not maybe performing as well for the supermarket, but it's important to them to have that product so they don't lose the customer. So they put it in, even though it's not a super high volume product. Now, again, what I mentioned in the Telegram is that for us, that works both ways. You know, we think that the pregnant woman, which is a super high value household for the supermarkets, right? When we start to take over the pregnancy ice cream consumption market, and when pregnant women know that Nightfood is their ice cream, well, there's going to be a disadvantage. The supermarkets that do not have Nightfood in, as we start to hit that tipping point, there are going to be pregnant customers that will go elsewhere because they want to get Nightfood and they can only get it at this store and not their competition. So we're using that in our favor now. We did use it last year because we're the only sleep-friendly ice cream and ice cream for better sleep. But I think it's much more acute for the buyer and much more potent of an argument when you're talking about pregnant women, because it's a high visibility audience and literally and figuratively, and it's a high value audience. And I think that's been a big part of the level of responsiveness that we've seen totally tick up in terms of supermarket category buyers since the announcement in February. So there's two things. One is our unit velocities have increased, which makes the buyers obviously pay more attention, but also the differentiation on the pregnancy side is making the category managers take notice.
Interesting. I think you touched on a lot of crazy points there. You know, the first one that I thought was incredibly interesting from a listener, it strikes true. No one goes to the supermarket, to the grocery store, and just buys one thing, right? So being able to have dairy free, being able to have other things, obviously encourages people to go. And even though the supermarket might be saying, oh, well, we don't make as much money here, like you said, it's better than losing a whole customer.
Right.
I think you touch on a good point in other videos as well as this. Like, you guys are really spearheading the next kind of category of nighttime food, right? Night food, as we all say. But I think it makes sense. And as you guys are extending that category, there's going to be people that are looking for those types of food. Even in the worst case that you guys aren't performing as crazy as I guess, high fat, high tasty ice cream, which even though you guys are extremely tasty, people might be going to these supermarkets to buy, things that help them sleep, things that, of course, are great for pregnant women, etc. So I think it's fantastic. You guys have a kind of competitive advantage in that way. You're not just another of the same.
Yeah, well, the real question is how substitutable is the product, right? So if a store is out of Haagen-Dazs, you can buy Talenti, and that's fine, probably, right? If a store is out of the non-dairy thing that you want, you're not going to just buy a pint of Haagen-Dazs. You right, the non-dairy person who's maybe lactose intolerant or living a vegan lifestyle, they're not just going to shrug their shoulders and say, well, they don't have the one I wanted, I'll get this other one. And it's the same thing with the pregnancy. The pregnant woman who's buying Nightfood because it's healthier for her and her baby is not just going to want to be willing or want to substitute out. They're going to theoretically go to another store. And it's not everybody, of course, but the higher the consumer motivation to consume a particular product, the more likely they are to make their shopping decisions based on which stores have the most important things. Because you can get Cheerios probably everywhere, and you can get Oreos probably everywhere. And then there are certain products, up and coming products, usually that store A has and store B doesn't. I mean, one of the buyers that put us in recently in our meeting said to me, he said, I missed out on Halo Top back in, I don't know what it was, 2015, or there was a year that Halo Top just totally exploded. And this guy had said no. And sure enough, he had to spend the whole year reading about every magazine, about Halo Top taking over the industry, the number one selling pint and everything else. And he missed it. And you know what? When he told me that, I knew that he was saying yes to us, even though I didn't get my formal answer, for 3 months after that meeting. I knew he felt he could not afford to miss out on the next big thing. And so there's a little bit of that political, I don't know if that's political or, dynamic going on of, saving face in the buyer's meeting, or looking good to your bosses. So even if somebody's wrong, they want to have a legitimate reason for thinking that, and the other thing, Jason, it's funny because, all of these thoughts are just coming to me. The other thing to keep in mind is what has upside, right? So that category manager is going to put in a product, and if they put in another premium ice cream, what is the chances that that's actually going to be a huge home run mega hit, and it's going to steal all the market share from Ben and Jerry's and Talenti and all that stuff? Well, it's probably not going to do that. It might taste great, but those taste great also. What is going to drive a huge number of consumers? Because there's no advantage to these guys to hit singles, because they could just bring in the next 2 flavors of Ben and Jerry's that they don't carry, the next 3 flavors of Talenti that they don't carry, right? So what they're looking for a lot of times is they do want to take a little bit more chances in some cases on a product that they think has breakout potential. And there's no reason to take a chance on a product that's a Me Too product, because even if it succeeds, the standards for success are much lower. And it's kind of like why some people, I guess, invest in penny stocks, because a penny stock, can be a 10-bagger, right? If you put your money right now into, I don't know, IBM or something, it's a stable thing. Maybe it can be pretty likely to grow. Maybe you're getting a dividend, right? It's more conservative, but the odds of it just being a huge home run is probably not the same as with a company that's brand new on the market and just being introduced. So I think there's a little bit of that mindset in the buyers as well, and we're a brand that they can see, like, wow, this guy is going out on a limb, right, with what he's doing. This brand is a little bit outside. And if it's right, if they're right, and if they connect with the market, this can be the next Halo Top 4 or 5 years later. So there's a lot of that, I'm sure, and we definitely make sure that the buyers understand the upside, which again is just absolutely massive.